Let's take a look at the waiver wire for Fantasy Week 9 right now on FFT Express. Okay, what's up? It's Adam Azer and Jamie Eisenberg. Who are the top players to get on the waiver wire, Jamie?
I think you look at not Juwan Jennings, Cedric Tillman first. Going back a couple weeks,
Yeah, we
Cedric Tillman first for the Browns, and hopefully what we've seen the last two games from him continues as Jameis Winston leans on him a little bit more so for some big plays, and certainly you've seen the numbers. Without Amari Cooper there, Elijah Moore's coming off a strong game. Jerry Judy's coming off a strong game. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with facing the Ravens and their beat up secondary. And the schedule is not exactly favorable for at least this week. And then they have a bye in week 10. They get the Chargers in week 9. So don't go overboard with Tillman, but I think he's worth adding to your team. Then we look at some quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford and Bo Nix. Stafford coming off his best game of the season, first full game with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Bo Nix coming off his best game of the season, taking on the Ravens next week. He just beat up on the Panthers. So it could be, strong stretch of games for him. And as I said on our full length show, he's got 4 games in a row with at least 6 fantasy points with his rushing totals alone, 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 games over 60 yards rushing. So he's doing a nice job as he comes into his own in his rookie campaign.
All right, Matthew Stafford, Bo Nix, and Cedric Tillman. But what do you think overall about the Browns passing game? Because it's not just Tillman. There's Elijah Moore. Jerry Judy is available in a number of leagues. Jameis Winston. So they just played the Ravens. They just beat up, one of the easiest matchups. Obviously, you mentioned it's going to get harder. But to what degree are you buying into the Browns passing game?
I mean, look, it's Jameis, so you buy into the idea of he's going to take chances. There's going to be some mistakes. He didn't have any on record, at least, but he had a few that almost were mistakes. And I think you just hope that there's 8 targets to go around to almost all these guys because Nick Chubb is still struggling to run the ball. And based on how their defense hasn't exactly been playing at the same level that we saw a year ago, they're probably going to be in some shootouts. So I think you just view them as number 3 receivers and you tier them as Tillman can be a top 30 guy. Moore, I give a slight nod to over Judy right now as a top 32, 33 guy, and Judy right around 36 to 40. Let's not forget, David Njoku is a big part of this too.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. The one thing that we didn't say on the main show about the Browns is that their offensive line is healthy-ish. They hopefully will get Cedric Wills back soon, their left tackle. But it's a much different team than what it was at the beginning of the year. They were out. Their tackles were out. Their center got hurt. They're pretty much healthy, and they could have a really good offensive line and some weapons here. And by the way, we'll talk about Nick Chubb on Wednesday's show, but definitely might be a guy that you want to buy low on because he had a really good involvement in a tough matchup against the Ravens. Let's talk about the Colts here, because if they make a change at quarterback, what does that mean for the waiver wire and for players to drop? Like you can't drop Michael Pittman right now just with the possibility that they'd go to Flacco.
Can't drop Pittman. You should be adding Josh Downs if you have a roster spot to play with. It's a little more challenging in 10-team leagues because there's a lot of great players on the waiver wire. In 12-team leagues, I think it's worth your interest to add him if you need a receiver, because we saw there was a lot of great production with Flacco in those 3 appearances that he had. Came in the Pittsburgh game and the next 2 starts. So yes, you should be adding Downs, as we talked about, Downs over Tillman if you know that Flacco is the starter. So Flacco is worth picking up. 3 appearances, 19 fantasy points in 2 of them. One of those wasn't a start. So there's a lot to like about his value too. So super flex in 2 quarterback leagues, he should be a must add. And in 1 quarterback leagues, he's worth a look in deeper leagues.
Let's take a quick break here. We'll give you some more names to know off the waiver wire when we come back on Fantasy Football Today Express. It's not a great week for running backs, Jamie. What are we supposed to do here?
So I think you're looking more long-term than short-term. The short-term options would be Jaleel McLaughlin, just, getting some work and maybe at some point overtaking Javonte Williams, who we know has been up and down and coming off a pretty disappointing game against the Panthers. You can look at Tyjae Spears with the hope that he returns this week and, continues what he started before he went down when he's coming off a 15-carry game against the Dolphins. And then, as you said, the following game was starting to get a little bit more work, at least in tandem with Tony Pollard. He could be a potential flex option, 10 PPR points in the 2 healthy games before he suffered this injury. And then you got some stash guys. And my favorite running back to add this week because of the uncertainty would be Isaac Orendo. You can't use him in week 9. 49ers are going to buy. They are expecting Christian McCaffrey to return in week 10. Would be great. But if McCaffrey can't go or is limited, or they're going to give him some, somebody to share with, Jordan Mason's dealing with a shoulder injury. So it might be Isaac Orendo in a featured role. And I thought he looked very good, against the Cowboys in the action that he got. But Time to pick up Blake Corum, time to pick up Kamani Vidal, time to pick up some of these guys that if they get an opportunity to be starters, oh my gosh, you picked them up before the injury, and look how smart you are.
Someone wants to know, in Dynasty, should he drop Kamani Vidal for Cedric Tillman?
Receivers always have a little bit more upside, and without Cooper there, that they're going to, look at him as a potential option to be in a featured role. I don't think Elijah Moore is a long-term answer for the Browns, but we know they signed Jerry Jeudy when they made the trade for him. So it's not a bad move. I would hope that you have somebody else to drop instead of Vidal, because he could be the starter for the Chargers next season if they move on from Dobbins.
All right, at tight end, what are we doing at tight end, Jamie?
It's not a bad week. I think you look at a few 1 week versus long-term options. So 1 week, you have Mike Gesicki, who's had 2 of 3 good games without T. Higgins on the field. You look at Dalton Schultz, who's got an opportunity here with potentially, Stephon Diggs on top of Nico Collins being out. One guy we didn't really touch on was Noah Fant. Great matchup against the Rams, and DK Metcalf may not play. It's not a guarantee he's going to return. And then Hunter Henry, I think, just in terms of long-term, we've talked about this for the last several weeks. I'm surprised he's only rostered in 60% of leagues. Drake May being out potentially with the concussion doesn't make it very comfortable to trust Henry. But if you're looking him versus some of these other guys, you don't need a tight end for this week. Then you can just go with Henry and see what happens.
All right. And then finally at wide receiver, if we can't get one of the Browns guys, who are we looking at?
Xavier Legette makes some sense. With the potential trade of Deontay Johnson, he's had, I think 3 positive games in the last month. The one that he didn't, he was hurt. So we'll see what they do with their quarterback, but Legette's coming off a touchdown with Bryce Young. And then Coker, deeper leagues, he might be somebody to keep an eye on there. Parker Washington with the injuries to Jacksonville's receiving core. Gabe Davis is hurt. Christian Kirk's out for the season. Brian Thomas is hurt. So Washington will most likely be the replacement for Kirk. So there's long-term upside there, potentially. But in deeper leagues, he should be added. And then you got guys like Nick Westbrook-Akina, who's, looking like he's going to get some more opportunities without DeAndre Hopkins there in Tennessee, if you want to buy into that. And some guys that we've talked about a lot over the last month or so. Demario Douglas, it's funny because he comes off that huge game with Drake May's first start against the Texans. Then he gets sick in the London game against Jacksonville, and then May gets a concussion against the Jets. So we haven't seen these two guys play together consistently, but I would buy back into Douglas. I'm trying to think of anybody else. I think that's
fine.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a team I'm looking at a league right now in the waiver wire, and Demario Douglas is Tillman stands out, but Demario Douglas. And here's the thing about Tillman, like he is pretty low in the projections, I believe. So you're not gonna, if you just go to CBS and you just go to like the wide receivers, you got to control F for Tillman because he's pretty low in the projections, or command F, whatever your heck you're using. All right, let me read a few questions here. Noah Fant or Dalton Schultz?
Schultz.
Yeah, you know what? Oren says, can't trust Caleb Williams. Should I pick up Darnold, Stafford, or Jameis? And should we be dropping Caleb Williams after that performance?
No. I mean, the Cardinals aren't exactly great. So let's see what he does, against the Arizona defense. But I would start Stafford over him, and I would start Darnold over him. So if you have to make a decision, then you could drop him for Stafford first.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
The thing about Stafford is it's just going to come down to touchdowns, because I think he's going to have a lot of yards, but we know Kyren Williams is a vulture, and Kyren Williams scores every week. I don't know if he scored last week. He scored the receiving touchdown, but yeah, but so that's the thing that's going to hurt Stafford. Like you saw the game Russell Wilson had yesterday, terrific game, but didn't have a big game because he only had 1 touchdown. Stafford does nothing with his legs, and Kyren Williams runs a lot, but Stafford is a good. I'm dropping Tua for him in a league. I'm hoping to drop Tua for him in a league. All right, let's wrap it up. Oh wait, Bo Nix or Joe Burrow this week?
Burrow.
And Parker Washington or Elijah Moore?
Excuse me.
Elijah Moore.
I would go Washington.
Really?
I mean, look, if they're all out.
Okay. Well, but what about for an ad, not for a start? Still
Elijah Moore.
Okay. That's Jamie. I'm Adam. Have a good day, everybody. See ya.